Test, test, test. Good morning, everybody. We'll be getting underway in about 10 minutes. For all of those that are here, please start making your way to your seats. Inductees, please come up front and sit in your reserved seats. We'll get underway. Now, with the greatness of social media, I would like to let everybody know that we will be streaming on Facebook Live. So if you have any family members that are sitting at home that would like to see and listen to the panel discussion, also see all the inductees get their jackets, all you have to do on Facebook is go to the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. Go to their page. You'll be able to stream live. We'll get underway at 10:30. Or you can go onto the website itself at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. We'll also be streaming it live from there. So we'll get underway in about 8 minutes. So please take your seats. We'll get started shortly.
I'm going in with the legends. I'm just the announcer of legends. Big difference, buddy. I tell Larry, I said, you know, I grew up around Junior Meek, and he picked on me all the time, bruised me all the time. I had to get tough to be around him. Hell, Randy Watson puts me in boots.
Yes, really been good. Is Daddy here?
I talked to people, Are you sitting by Larry D?
How are you, Ray?
Well, hammer up. That's the only way you can catch her anyhow.
I'm doing good, everybody. How about you? That's of course, I don't know.
Good to see you. Good. Glad to see you.
I've been seeing you on TV a lot.
You work cheap.
That's good.
Do what?
Are you all right this morning?
Oh, I'm great every morning. Great in the evening, great in the morning.
Sit in the back row there. Sit by HP. Hey, you go sit back there by HP. Let Joel sit here.
Okay.
Get in there, Ray.
Got you. Joel Edmondson right here, bro.
Right here?
Huh?
What do you got against Lari?
Dave Appleton. Joel, I want you front and center. I know.
Very well, thank you. How are you? Yes.
I said, what do you got against me?
I thought, wait a
One like Charlie.
Right yours with you?
Terry Gay's got hugs and kisses for you.
All right.
She's here.
I've changed seats 2 or 3 times. I'll set by HP.
All right.
We're going to reach out there 35 foot and catch one.
All right.
You still got that toe
Drag a
tap?
knot off his ass.
Well, you won't mind that too. I seen you come walking in.
Where you living at now, John?
Nerve-wracking.
Bull ride
Where
day.
you living now?
Bull ride.
RV. That's okay.
Been a while. That's been a long damn while. Hey, Pete carry his in that. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
You gotta come bring that thing up to North Dakota in the summer where the
Pete got we carry his in one of them styrofoam house
I
chairs.
got plug-ins. I got
rodeo you ever won.
say all you want.
All right.
Just take it to rodeo with me.
Did you work a lot with Bob Tallman?
Yeah, you anytime you want. I got a half a dozen plug-ins there.
Really?
Eugene, Oregon. I just come out of Canada. We worked the Canadian 4th of July. They're ahead of us. We came to Eugene, Oregon. Bob was just getting started.
They gave me this one.
I'll be honest with you, I never heard anybody do a better job.
Wouldn't stop
He
talking.
had the audience.
Thank you.
Somebody there about Pete, man.
I'll be down there.
I always thought if I announced rodeo,
Pretty good, huh?
I never would do that. And I always tried. I never was that good at it.
In 1991, I was the third leg announcer at the national finals. So TJ Walker and Coach Sean Davis was last night. They were going to find me and Bob for smoking. Hold the cigarettes under the table. And so I said, I don't need a fine. I told TJ, I said, I'll do anything, waive the fine. I'll go to grievance. He said, it's good. I'm chairman of grievance. I knew I was screwed. So anyway, they let us go. 7th go around, Thomas.
And a pleasant good morning to everybody joining us here at this great museum, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. We'd like to welcome everybody this morning as we get underway with some of our opening ceremonies for our panel discussion here this morning. My name is Dave Appleton. I'll be working along with Pam Minnick this evening as your MC for the event. For everybody joining us online, we thank you for joining us here online. We've got a great inductee class, and to get underway, let's find out and meet some of our inductees, and then from that point, we turn it into what's called the panel discussion, and my job is to keep it between the lines or out of the bar ditch. It usually goes south. Beyond that, it's going to be a lot of fun. This year we are doing something new and special. Each of the inductees is going to receive a beautiful jacket. First and foremost, before we give them the jacket, I would also like to thank a couple of housekeeping notes. One, first and foremost, I'd like to welcome and thank all the RHS board members for sticking around today. Thank you all for what you do for this great museum. Second, I'd also like to thank the Cowboy board members of the Rodeo Historical Society. Thank you for what you do in helping get this great class set up. We have some beauty and some pageantry. Please come forward, young lady. Miss Rodeo, Oklahoma, Natalie Gooderrice. She is going to be the young lady that is going to be hoisting the jackets on all of our inductees. With that being said, Natalie, grab your first jacket. Can we please have stand up? He's in the back row. He might not be tall, but he's never been missed. Our first inductee, none other than our Ben Johnson Award recipient, Mr. Mike Hudson. Step forward, Hud. We'll get a picture out front, right out front, Hud. And you are most welcome to wear your jacket so you can look like the inductee class of 2025. There you go, Hud. Next year, we'll have sponsors all over that thing. I see a sponsorship opportunity. All right, the Tad Lucas Award recipient. How about Rope Like a Girl? The legend, Lari Guy. The next inductee, well, they tried to make one for his world-famous act, but they said they couldn't fit one on snort, so hello, John Taylor. Step up here and get your jacket, sir. One of the great things about cowboys and cowgirls is their ability to serve, and this gentleman's one of many that has also served in our armed forces, and as I think 4 or 5 of our inductees have. So let's say a great round of applause for not only somebody that served, but he did a lot of great things in the rodeo arena. How about Lari Allen Clayman? Step up and I'll get you your jacket. Get the right jacket. Nothing like seeing a guy from North Dakota shuck off a jacket and get sponsorship banners everywhere else. Let's have a big round of applause for Chad Berger getting his jacket. I like it. Hard to believe that this next guy actually started out as a bareback rider, and thank God he fell off a few and he decided falling off a horse was the way to go. The big man, Joel Edmondson. The world of rodeo has known forever some characters. Flair might be the word. Everybody today may know all about the great Rocker Steiner and his antics. let me tell you something. The next guy, they just called him an outlaw. He was the first of its cool to be a cowboy. All you had to do was say these two letters, and everybody knew who it was. H.P. Evetts, one of the greatest in the game. He invented cool when it came to being a cowboy. Oh, we've got mic drop. That's a mic drop moment. You are in the house.
First time I ever saw HP miss a dally.
And when you heard that voice, that means one thing. There is a gay in the house. The next inductee, of course, the legend himself, Mr. Neal Gay, accepting on his behalf is his son, 8-time world champion, Donnie Gay. Them some tough shoes to fill, Daring. When it comes to swinging a loop, say hello to Bobby Goodspeed. Nobody did it any better. When it comes to grease paint, and we've got several this year, what we are honoring when it comes to doing some great things in the rodeo world, let's circle back to one of the great legends, Mr. Wiley McCray. His grandson is accepting on his behalf, Mr. Patrick McCray. One of the great voices of rodeo comes forth this afternoon or this morning and gets his jacket. Say hello to Charlie Throckmorton.
Yes, Donnie, it's a double X. Knew you was going to say something.
Thank you, Charlie.
So is mine, Charlie.
I will say, gentlemen and ladies, before you leave at the end of the panel discussion, please stay seated. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are already or doing it. We'd love to have a great photo opportunity because it's great to see you all in your jackets. Let's have a round of applause for this great class. Of course, this evening they'll be enshrined. The event gets underway at 5 o'clock is when the doors open. We'll get started with the ceremonies after that. Okay, that's the organized portion of the event. Now we go wheels off, or as Donnie Gay would say, flaps up, kids. Hold on to your hat. The best thing about the panel discussion is this is one of those situations where you don't know where it's going to go. You start off somewhere, and the story will get started, and somebody else is going to try to top the story. So first and foremost, I grew up around this guy when he was involved in rodeo. He's got a great rodeo history. He worked for the Coors brand for several years. The legendary line that I ever knew, and I never knew that this was even in the dictionary. I still don't know if it's in the dictionary, but there was a term given to people that were not really rodeo people that wanted to be called rodeo people, and the nickname was that you were a jick. And that was a great term that came from Mike Hudson. So Mike, step up. Tell us, where did this term come from?
Dave, it'd take too long, but basically it was originated in Brazos County in Texas. The highway, this friend of mine I grew up with was criminology major at Sam Houston, and he had to do a part-time job to fulfill his obligation on a criminal justice deal. He ran the Brazos County Jail at night. Highway Patrol brings this guy in one night. And when they get him in there, they start quizzing him about if they know other people. He said, do you know like Jim Smith? He said, yeah, I know him. He said, what's the deal? He says, he's a jick. Cersei goes, a jick? What's it? In the Highway Patrol, he's like, what's a jick? He said, you know, hang out, reprobate, stays drunk all the time, wears silly clothes, just a jick. He said, but you can use it so many ways. He's a jick, she's a jick, I'm going to get jick. They are jicks. You know, you could, any way you wanted to use it, but that's basically kind of a short version of where that came from.
It always starts somewhere. All right, now one thing you do have to say is back in the day, you had some, Diane Griffin here, Diane Ragland, she's got a great jacket. What's the story behind this great jacket? You've got a jacket set up.
I'm gonna let Diane explain. Her and their friend Delise Travis made.
Come over here, girls, real quick. We'll show this jacket because this thing has got some bling to it. You don't know which way it's going to go. Diane, come on over here, girls. Come over here. We'll get this up real quick. All right, looky here. Woo, Porter Wagner would step back Loretta. All right, tell us all about this.
Well, we decided to make this. It started out as a joke, and I found this jacket in my dad's closet. He was a sharp dresser back in the 70s, and he had lots of colorful polyester suits. So I found this yellow polyester suit in his closet, and Delise and I decided to make this for HUD, make him a good jick jacket. So anyways, it's been around the block. We figured he'd probably just wear it as a joke one night or something, it would be over with, but it has covered some ground, that's for sure. And we've had a lot of fun with it. He wears it well.
I can think, don't we all think he needs to wear that this evening and he steps on stage? I mean, if you're going to be the jickster, you got to wear the jacket. I mean, come on. All right, thank you, girls, very much. Thank you, ladies. All right, behind every word, there's a story. Larry D. You grew up in a family, your dad was a roper. You came along. Not many people might realize this, but you were a lefty that had to learn how to rope right. Talk about what your dad's philosophy was that as it got started in your career.
Well,
Hey, your turn's next, HP.
well, HP can probably help me with this, but my brother's 3 years older than me and always wanted to do what he did and do it better. So my mom was a barrel racer and always wanted me to run barrels, but, I wanted to be a roper. So I worked at it really hard. It was really hard. I had to learn the basics, the basics to everything. Everything I did was kind of backwards, I guess you would say. But my dad stuck with me and was patient with me and, taught me the basics. And I feel that's what helped me in my career is, just always having something to go back to and having the basics. And that's what I followed my whole career.
Good enough. HP. The outlaw.
What now?
Me? Yes, sir.
Speak up. I can't hear anymore.
Can't hear anymore. I'll come over close. Talk about you growing up as a maverick in the sport of rodeo. You grew up with a rope in your hand, but you had an attitude different to most. Talk about just who and what made HP.
Well, I always wanted to rope ever since I was a little kid. And I never got to go they wouldn't let me go anywhere until I was 6. And after I was 6, I got to go everywhere. I could, they almost give me.
Just six.
Huh?
Only at 6 years old you can start going everywhere.
And
Most usually don't go until like 16.
Rope. And then I had 2 heroes. That was Leo and Gerald Camarillo, huh? I just wanted to, I know them since I was a little kid. That's all I wanted to do was just be with them guys. And, I grew up and got to do it.
How many people remember the iconic photo of HP with his hair down to here, sitting on a fence with Leo beside him, and Leo's got the shirt open? one of the most iconic photos in rodeo, and he's one of the most iconic guys that there is.
Thank you all.
When it comes to a funny man in the barrel that you look at and you laugh, this man had it. There was just something about him, and it was none other than the great John Taylor. His physique was like a barrel, so he was a barrel man. But he had the greatest act ever, snort. John, where did this act come from? Because you dang near bucked off every pickup man in rodeo with snort in the arena.
Well, Snort, he was built in Oneida, South Dakota. And when I started doing this act, I didn't know what to do. You know, well, how am I going to present it to the public? So I figured the pickup man. So when I go out there with that horse, can't believe it, people. He would spook the horses and everything. And I'll never forget a 21 performance in Fort Worth, Texas. Neal Gay's rodeo. Jim Gay, he was out there. In 21 performance, there was never a horse that didn't miss spook Snort. And people just love it. He made a name for myself, and God bless what they did for me.
When it comes to the bull business, most people would say you got to raise a Bramer in the swamp in Florida. Cowtown comes to Rodeo, Harold Harris and everything. But this man, he's got some bulls, and boy, does he have a few, and has he made an impact. He rode broncs. He was a team roper. He's a cattle broker. He does a little bit of everything, but most people know him now as the man with the bulls. Let's say hello to 19 times, 17 times stock contractor of the year, 12 times stock contractor of the year, Mr. Bullman, Chad Berger. Chad, talk about this bull career. How did it come about?
Well, it goes back to my mom and dad. You know, they grew up, both of them grew up in the poorest of poor families. They were German migrants from Russia. That the only land left in the United States to settle was North Dakota. So everything their folks had came over in an apple box across on a ship, and my mom and dad were married at the 18 and 16 years old. I was the fourth kid at 23. My dad worked for 50 cents a day and got some people that treated him bad. And that money went home to feed the family. My mom worked with her mom. They shocked wheat for 25 cents an acre. And so I had parents that knew what it was like to be tough, and they made us tough, and they installed a lot of great things in us. And, you know, without them, my story would never be what it is today. But they taught us kids how to work hard, how to treat people right, how to do things right, and good things will come. And what I did was, in the bull business, my dad started raising some of the greatest bulls in the world. PBR come along. I really was busy doing cattle business, and I was married very young myself, having kids. And when the PBR come along, I seen where you could. My dad did it for nothing for years. You know, cost him money to raise them bulls. But he told the guy one time. The guy said, "Why are you raising them bulls? You don't make any money anyway." And he said, "Well, why do you go fishing? You don't make any money fishing." He said, "You go fish, I'll raise my bulls. Just leave me alone." He said, and so when I seen the PBR come along, I knew there was a chance where you could actually raise bulls and make money doing it. And so we started our own company, and I think, you know, my dad taught me so many things about animals, and I'm a cattle broker, so you got to know health, and I just think I had to jump on a lot of guys. I knew how to keep my bulls healthy, and my dad gave me a good eye for bulls, and rest is history. So I'd owe it all to my mom and dad, all my success. They built the roadmap. I just had to follow it. So that's how it happened.
Larry Allen, as a rodeo clown, you started out working for Jim Shoulders and Cotton Rosser. The only name on here I can think of, legends, that's tough to work for. His son sitting down there at the end, and I'm sure you're involved, Neal Gay. But talk about your experience as a clown working for those iconic names in rodeo, Jim Shoulders, Cotton Rosser.
Dave, I was working my last amateur rodeo. I just joined the Marine Corps, and it was 1961, and I was working my last rodeo at Okmulgee, Oklahoma. And, of course, I've always heard about Jim Shoulders. And the rodeo's over, and I'm sitting on my trailer wiping the makeup off and sweating. This gentleman walked up beside of me and introduced himself as Jim Shoulders. And Jim said, "I sure like the way you work. I wonder if you could be interested in going to work for me." And I said, "Jim, I just joined the Marine Corps. I can't." And he said, "Well, when you get out, holler at me. You know, so I'd like to have you work for me." So long story short, he told me about the Colonel out at Camp Pendleton, California. Be sure and meet the Colonel. He runs the rodeo arena at Camp Pendleton, and I got to meet the Colonel. And the next thing you know, I meet Andy Oregi because of the Colonel, because Colonel run the rodeo arena there, and Andy furnished the buck and stock. And Andy liked my work. Lex Conley, you probably remember Lex, Dave, but Lex Conley was part of this. And so Andy Oregi hired me to work my first professional rodeo, and that went to Bishop, California. They call it the Mule Days up there at Bishop. And lo and behold, I worked with Slim Pickens, and it was quite a great experience. And this one thing led to the other, and during the Cuban crisis, I was sent to Washington and had a chance to meet Howard Harris, because Jim brought a rodeo to Leesburg, Virginia, and I called him and said, "I'm out here." And I lived at Leesburg, and I worked the rodeo there, met Howard Harris, started working rodeos for Howard, and one thing led to the other, you know, and then I get a call from Lex when I'm out of the Marine Corps and go back to work for Cotton. But I wanted to say something about the Gay boys here today. Neal Gay and Jim Shoulders were real instrumental in helping me get started when I got out of the Marine Corps. And Jim asked me to come to Mesquite, and I remember going to Neal's house for dinner after church, you know, and Kay had to have us a nice dinner after church. And so I've always appreciated the Gay family. But one thing led to the other, and I've just been blessed to work some of the great rodeos in this country. I got to counting the stock contractors that I've worked for, and I counted 26 rodeo stock contractors. And I got to thinking, you know, they're all family. We're all family in the rodeo business. And I'm looking at my family filling up this whole row here, and it's all about family.
That is for sure. Rodeo is family. Thank you, Larry. Off of that, we'll pivot to Don Daring, Mr. 8-time. Larry said it best, family. Your dad did so much for so many, me included. A lot of people may not know it, but give us the Don Gay version of what it was like to grow up being Neal Gay's son, because he was an icon. And there's so much behind the scenes that people didn't know about your dad.
My dad was pretty much an open book. There was the right way or the wrong way. You either did it or you didn't. There are no excuses. That might be that's a really good excuse, but it's still an excuse. He and Jim Shoulders started that rodeo in Mesquite in 1958, and they struggled mightily for an awfully long time before they ever actually made any money. My dad had a feed store. He built houses. He mowed lots. He worked his tail off to make sure that the Mesquite Rodeo started at 8 o'clock and was over at 10 o'clock. And they just worked hard. And it's one of the biggest reason that I never say rodeo is a sport is because we never took our uniform off. I mean, it was a lifestyle for us. I grew up in the world's largest dirt playground with the best role models on the planet. You know, Jim Shoulders with his world titles, and my dad with his toughness and knowledge. And, you know, Neal Gay would be proud as punch to be sitting right here, but he also wouldn't talk near as long as I have already. You know, he just was a very tough guy, and his perseverance, I think, probably had as much to do with mine and my brother's success furthering on into this business, far more than we'll ever know, because I still, even driving from Terrell up here to Oklahoma City, going down, the last time I remember coming into Oklahoma City on 35, driving a car and not flying an airplane, was with my dad coming to the bucking horse sale that they had here every January. You know, so Neal Gay was all rodeo, but the biggest accomplishment and the best thing that ever happened to professional rodeo was Alan Reed and my dad putting together the championship rodeo series, which wound up on TNN for over 14 years. That ran longer than Gunsmoke, if you will. You know, the PBR was on the train track, but it needed a little propulsion, and that championship rodeo with national television coverage probably changed the face of rodeo more than any other single thing that's ever happened.
I would agree with that. That was great. In fact, I'm not on the panel, but I'll say one thing funny after that. Right after I got lucky enough to win the world championship in '88, I was getting on a plane flying somewhere, and this lady sees my shiny buckle, and she stops me, and she says, looks at it, and she reads it, and she says, "Oh, you're a world champion." I said, "Yes, ma'am." Kind of stood there real proud of myself. Then she looks up at me, and she says, "Have you ever won Mesquite?"
I'm telling you, those are the best stories. Marvin Garrett tells them. I love it. And, you know, and that's the testament. You know, that's what my dad actually contributed to rodeo.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's such a great legend. Joe, world champion, 1983 steer wrestler. How does a guy go from wanting to be a bareback rider to a steer wrestler? I mean, when you stand up, that's obvious, but what in God's creation made you want to be a bareback rider to start out with?
Well, I actually filled my permit riding bareback horses.
I like it. Easy money.
Then I finally figured out that my rump was too round to compete with the rest of these guys. So I went, told my dad, I think I want a bulldog, and he was, fortunately, he had friends, and he took me to Roy and Bill Duval, and that was the start. And I know we lost Bill, but they're two of the greatest, so I had a chance all along.
Talk about the Duval experience, because I'm not going to let you jump off that fast and get off that microphone. Talk about the impact that they had on your world. You started there. I mean, they're legends in the game.
Well, believe it or not, the first thing Roy told me, he said, if you want to be a winner, you've got to learn how to lose. And, you know, there's more to that. And all my career, I'd teach that at my schools. And I had my girls, when they were breakaway roping, if they missed one or something, my youngest, we had a 5-minute pissy rule. You got 5 minutes. Get it, and then it's done. It's over with. You know, and the people that carry the bad run with them is just hurting the next run they go. So,
I'd like to tell you a little bit of story about Joel's dad.
Okay.
We're at Ozark, Missouri, and Ozark always had a good rodeo. I think it was in July, wasn't it, Jack, generally? And Leon Frakes had the stock, and Joel's dad is announcing, and his name was Benny Edmondson. And I saw something there, and I've never seen it before, never seen it since. Benny's announcing the rodeo, and they called his name up in the calf rope, and he put his mic down, went down, got on the horse, roped his calf, tied him, come back up and got on the microphone. That was pretty rare.
That's called working all ends of the arena. All right, Patrick. Not very many can say in the rodeo lineage that your dad, I mean, and go back, and there's so many years of rodeo. Got the PRCA, the RCA, but it all began back in the days of the Turtle Association. Did your granddad ever talk to you about being part of that early days of the Turtle Association and rodeo as a rodeo clown?
Well, I never actually knew my grandfather. He passed away 2 years before I was born, and it was stories from my dad growing up, and then try to write everything down, try to remember it. Being young, you kind of probably heard about 60% of it, but once I became a father, found out I had to really hustle to remember and write things down, and I only found out about the turtles probably about 5 years ago. And so just kind of discovering for the first time, I always knew he was in rodeo and he had a career in rodeo, but I didn't really realize the extent of it, from the beginning to all 3 associations and everything. He just did it for from his teens, his entire life. So he followed through the entire thing.
Follow up on that. How impactful for you was it when you all of a sudden realized who your granddad was, even though you didn't get to know him because when he passed? How impactful, once you found that history, was it to you?
It's something that, looking back and hearing the stories from my dad, we would stay up hours and hours at night talking about Jim Shoulders, Slim Pickens, Calgary, everything. And then going through the research, it was like a book I couldn't put down, but it wasn't a book that I knew how far it was going to go. And going through everything, it's just these guys and Wiley, they lived an extraordinary life. And it's one of those things where every day I can go and I'll do a little bit of research. Every single day I'll try to find something new about my grandfather. And it's just unlike anything. It's very special.
Good stuff. Well, from the page, yes, very much so. From the pages of history to the worlds of firsts. First National Finals Rodeo was 1959. Sadly, there's not too many from that original class still with us. One of them's on the front row, Bobby Goodspeed. Bobby, talk about you growing up as a cowboy roping, and your rodeo family was, it was all done with a rope. Talk about the history of you growing up in your family and dealing everything with a rope.
Well, my dad, he roped all life, and I just grew up roping with him. And he went to Southern Rodeo Association to hand in, same with the Tuttles. But anyway, him and Clyde Burt went down there and they got 6 head. Well, the producer was trying to hide it because they didn't have the clothes good enough. But Daddy went all 6 go-rounds and Clyde went second. So they went first, second average. So Daddy won that association. But he taught me everything I know. That's about it.
That's about as fast as he roped. Fast. All right. The big joke here was leave the rodeo announcer to last because maybe we don't have 6 hours left and he has to shorten it up. Charlie, one of the greatest voices in rodeo. What you've done in the scene has just been unbelievable. You'd be the longest standing NSFR team announcer, so much in rodeo. How did you get to be an announcer?
Well, I didn't have the athletic prowess to be a roper, and I bulldogged some, but I couldn't beat anybody. But I could damn sure tell them how to do it. And Harry Tompkins, my surrogate father, my best friend, he was everything in life to me, forced me to get a card. He said, you blab all those stats off all the time, we're going to make money doing it. So lo and behold, Logan signed my card. Tompkins got me in the business. Neal Gay hired me. Ernest Johnson hired me. And a guy by the name of Jim Shoulders. And working for Jim was a treat, too. Donnie can tell you this. We're in a hot hotel room one time, and I took Harry to the rodeo with me. So Shoulders is in there, and I got Harry in there. Donnie comes in there, and I'm working on my day sheet in my underwear and a T-shirt and a pair of socks because the whole room was hot. And Shoulders said, Victrola, why don't you put on your pants? Ain't nobody want to see you in your drawers. And I said, Jim Shoulders, this is my damn room. I'll do what I want to. I might be naked. He said, be sure and warn me for that. But you remember those times. So I had Donnie in the room, Harry Tompkins, Jim Shoulders, and they said they were the greatest that ever lived. And it got deep. I'm telling you, it got deep. 2 weeks later, I'm running into Larry Mahan. And I said, you're not going to believe who I had in my room, and it got deep. I'm the greatest. No, I'm the greatest. No, I got more world titles. Mahan looked at me and he said, but Charlie, they were the greatest there's ever been. Poignant statement. I see a guy standing in the back right there 35 years ago this month. Clem McSpadden and I were announcing the national final steer roping. Guy Allen's back there, and he and Phil Line were battling for the world title. Came down to the 10th and final round, and Phil finally beat him by $85. So a few months ago, Guy and I went down to Phil's house. We set up a TV camera, and we relive those moments. And we'll have to bleep some of the segments if it's ever shown, but it was fun stuff. But I can think about the memories, and I can just see Neal Gay when I was announcing the Fort Worth Stock Show on that perch down there in bucket chute number 3, giving me the hand signals. He's still with me here today. They say the Cowboys ride away. No, they don't. They ride in our hearts and our minds and our souls. They give us our energy. They have never left us. Neal Gay's right here on my shoulder right now. I can still see that hand signal. He'll tell me when to sell it. You were there at Fort Worth. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to tell a story about you. But I won't. I won't talk all night. But
otherwise, I'll be doing this.
You'll be like Neal. Dave Appleton pulled his hair out at the Lone Star Racetrack, put on a rodeo there. All the red tape, and he was the producer, and I was the announcer. Donnie was the stock contractor. And go through the red tape. I thought we were going to lose the Lone Roo. You remember that? Red tape.
I was in and out of the rodeo business, one and done.
One and done. Anyway, it's an honor to be here. I'm going to leave out some names, and so many people that have been a part of my life for a long time. I can feel their presence here with the Shoulders and the Tompkins and the Bernice Johnsons and the Neal Gays, and a dear friend of mine I wished was still here was Brenda Michael. I love that lady. We talked every week, and just wonderful people that got me here. I'm here with the legends. I'm not a legend. I announce the legends. It's a big difference. But thank you. I love Oklahoma City.
Okay, I want everybody to start thinking. Tell us your best rodeo story that you can repeat in public that nobody knows about. Mike Hudson, I'll start. Oh, go ahead, Larry. You got your hand up, so you start, and the rest of you start thinking.
You know, Dave, I would be remiss if I didn't tell the story about John Taylor. And I guess Franks would be mad at me if I don't tell this story.
Go right ahead. This is what this is about.
I thought that
the speech is tonight. The after show is at the bar. This is the clean act, okay?
I think that John Taylor was one of the best barrel men I ever worked with, and I had an opportunity to work with Wiley McCray, and I had a chance to work with Jimmy Schumacher at his last rodeo at Denver, but John was the funniest rodeo clown, quail daubs, that kind of barrel man. But we're at Helena, Montana, and we had this act planned where I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but we got a car from a dealership, an old car, and we took the back end out of where you could crawl to the trunk, and we loaded the trunk up, and we had the back seat out. And a lot of people don't know this, but John Taylor and my chimpanzee, Toto, looked a lot alike when they took their shirts off. They're very, very hairy. So we put a diaper on John Taylor and a diaper on Toto. We put them in the back of that big car together back there, and we started putting kids in it. You've seen the act. But anyway, we didn't know how many kids we had in there. And that car was so full of kids, it wouldn't go in the arena. The Cowboys had to push it out in the arena. And we started introducing our family, you know, Charlie, 10 kids here, and we'd pull up 10 kids there and pull up 10 kids. 33 kids came out of that car. But wait a minute, I forgot the twins. And here comes John Taylor and Toto out of that car, and it might have been the funniest thing you've ever seen.
Well, I guess, John, it's your turn to rebut this situation.
Oh, Larry, I don't know about that story. Well, now I'm going to tell a story on Larry. We're in Bakersfield, California, and doing an act, and an ambulance came in to me. A cowboy got hurt, but he didn't get in the ambulance. Larry, he climbs in the ambulance, turns on the siren, turns on the lights, and I'm out there in the barrel. Here he comes, like 40 miles an hour. Hits my barrel, and the barrel is going up like this. He moves the ambulance because he thought he killed me. I said, I'm spitting dirt out of my mouth. I said, what are you doing?
That's not the way you said it, John.
No, we're not going to say that. But that's the story on Larry.
All right, Hud, best rodeo story you can repeat in public.
This is probably one of the best rookie do deals I've ever been a part of. Me and Hawkeye and T-Bone, he's here. We all lived together, several with 20 more, 30 more guys in a two-room apartment in Dallas. There was people there 24/7, 365, but during Dallas Rodeo, it was really full. Okay, we'd play Name That Cowboy, and me and Mike Bandy would get up early in the morning, and these guys would all be all over the floor. All you could see is the top of their head. We bet a case of beer for the run of the rodeo. Whoever won, Name That Cowboy. You couldn't look at it; you just had to guess from the top of their head. Bandy'd go, Name That Cowboy. Roddy Cokie. He'd pull the cover back. Nope. T.J. Walters. So we did that like a week. Bandy ended up winning the beer, case of beer. But for the good story, we were in Spring Hill, Louisiana, at the little rodeo up there. I'd come back from Birmingham. And Donnie, this is when I decided I was going to ride broncs, and I borrowed your saddle. And I said, when do you want it back? How long can I keep it? You said till you learn your lesson. Remember that? He did get his saddle back. It was about a year, I think he got it back. I got some beat up and tore up. I said, I didn't know there was a hell of a learning curve to it. You know, I knew it was tough, but I didn't know it was that tough. So we're coming back from Spring Hill. T-Bone's driving my car. We left Spring Hill, got in the car, Monty Taylor, me, Hawkeye, and T-Bone. T-Bone was taking the wheel. And we said, what time is it? It was like 10 to 11. Hawkeye said, hell, we can make closing time at Diamond Jim's, born in Dallas. So here we hit the road, and we got about Mount Pleasant. Highway Patrol pulls us over. He said, you guys in a hurry? T-Bone said, yeah, by golly, we got to get back to Dallas. He said, well, you might not make it to Dallas fast as you're driving. He said, let me see your driver's license. T-Bone gave him his Canadian driver's license. He said, you're from Canada? By golly, I am. He said, what are you doing down here? He says, oh, we've been doing some rodeos. Well, this guy liked rodeos. So we sit there a minute. He said, you know what? He said, I hate to, but I got to give you a speeding ticket. He said, I'm going to give it to you. It's $100. He said, can y'all pay for it, or you're going to have to go to jail till in the morning until the JP gets in? Of course, Hawkeye had $100. I got $100. He said, we'll pay it. I said, I'm following you down to the drop box right across from the courthouse. Okay. So T-Bone goes, by golly, we can get you $100. And Hawkeye does. I do. He said, got any gum? He said, yeah. He said, chew it up quick as you can. So T-Bone, he started chomping on that gum, you know, and the guy gave us an envelope, put the money in. He said, you got cash, yeah? So we and the cop looked at it, yeah. He said, put that in that envelope. He said, I'm going to follow you. We're going to put it in that drop box. He said, then y'all go. Okay. Okay, I said, you got that gum chewed? He said, I'm chewing the hell out of it. He said, it's about done. He said, well, let me have it. He took that gum and he stuck it on the back of that envelope that had that check in it. And he said, T-Bone, when you pull that drop box down, put it on there pretty good and just let the deal go. T-Bone goes, okay. So he gets it and he puts the gum on the deal. That cop's looking out the window, and he pulls that deal down, he's holding it, and he takes that envelope and pats it on that deal that you let fly back. Well, T-Bone he was jicky. He just let wham. We went, man. Hawkeye went, T-Bone, that was $100. He said, I didn't mean for it to slam. He said, drive around the corner to that cop. You know, he waved at us. We went on. He seen us put it in there. We drove around about 5 minutes and went back by there. Look, nobody was around. We pulled that flap down. That money's still stuck. He took it. We took off. So, and that cop probably was wondering how. He said, I seen him drop it in there. So he just pulled it off that flap with the gum on it.
Always cowboy ingenuity. Donnie Gay, best story you can tell on your dad.
Okay. Well, the first thing I just want everybody to know the very first television that we did in Mesquite, Texas was like 1963, and they filmed, my dad and Jim helped them film an episode of Route 66, if anybody's in here that ever watched that show. Ben Johnson, Denver Pyle, and Slim Pickens, they were the main characters in that week's episode. And I was 9 years old, and I was the tractor guy. I had to re-drag the arena every time they'd have an event. But the best story is my dad and Jim were trying to figure out how to fill the grandstands for our grand opening on Saturday night at Mesquite, Texas. You know, back then there were no freeways. LBJ runs right by Mesquite and dumps out right in the parking lot. Well, this, you know, back in the day, you had to come down Buckner Boulevard and, you know, Cyene Road and this, that, and the other. It took 30 minutes, and you had to buy TV coverage, you know, to be able to advertise events. And they were trying to figure out, you know, they called ABC in Dallas, the affiliate there, and they got the price of that, and they thought, uh-oh, we don't know what to do. So I'm not sure whether my dad came up with the idea or if it was Jay Lazy S, Jim Shoulders, but they got together and got them some cowboy friends. They figured the best way we can get on TV was to be breaking news. So there's about 10 cowboys horseback just before daylight. I think it was on like a Monday or a Tuesday, because rodeo was going to be on Saturday night, so they had to have a little lead time. They weren't sure about the timing issue, but they knew that if they could pull this off, they'd stop traffic somewhere. So they rode through downtown Mesquite and got over there to Galloway and Bryan Street, railroad intersection. And here come the train. They had their 6-shooters, and these were not play guns. They were real guns. They run up alongside the conductor of the train, and they're firing bullets and ricocheting them off the front of it to let them know that this was not just a house call. And they stopped and held up the train in downtown Mesquite, Texas. There's 10 of them horseback. It wasn't long before cameras were out there. They've got the train pulled over. They've got it stopped on the tracks. The conductor's got his hands up. And somewhere, someplace, somebody's got a picture of it, of them holding up the train, telling them they better get them a ticket to the Mesquite Championship Rodeo. Police chief happened to be a friend of my dad's, and he said, Neal, I don't know how long I can keep you out of jail. He said.
Chad, top that.
I don't know if I can top that. Most of my stories ain't that exciting, but the best rodeo story that I can tell you about, Roy Duval told me. I ended up buying a place probably 5-6 miles from Roy's, and got the pleasure of meeting him a few times, had him over at the house. But he told me about the first time he ever got on a plane in Chicago to go to Madison Square Gardens. He said everything he had was in a brown paper sack, and got on this plane and gets to New York City and tells the cab driver he wants to go to Madison Square Gardens. And so he said, I was so scared. This cab driver was going through them cars, and I'm hanging on the back seat, both on each door. And he said, I'm scared to death. And he pulls up, and he said, there's the Madison Square Garden. And he looked around, never seen no horse trailer, nothing. He said, are you sure? He said, yeah, this is the Madison Square Garden. So he gets out with his brown paper sack, and he goes looking around. He finds Leon Adams was out there with his trained bulls that he Roman rides, and so he hooked up with Leon, stayed with him, and they went out that night and had a few drinks, and they closed the bars up, he said, and Leon said, well, I'm going to go check on my bulls. So he goes to check on his bulls. Roy goes with him. There's a stud horse penned next to them two bulls, biting and nipping at them bulls. And pretty soon he said, Leon comes with this big rope. And Roy says, what are you going to do with that, Leon? He said, we're going to cut this stud. He says, and so they went on and cut this stud. And they went back to the room the next day and come back. And there's police cars there. And they're investigating, trying to figure out what happened to this horse. And Roy said, man, I was just scared to death. I thought we were going to jail. And he said, and then I was up in the bulldogging, and Clem McSpadden was announcing. He said, this is Roy Duval from Chakota, Oklahoma. And they tell me he's pretty handy with a knife. So I think that's the greatest rodeo story ever that I ever heard. And it's the real deal.
Larry D., your best rodeo story.
Man, I don't have a lot of these good stories like these guys do. I wish I would have been at rodeoing back in that time. That was when it was fun, you know.
You could get away with a lot.
Yeah, you know, we had too many cameras and Facebook and all that stuff around when I was rodeoing. But when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be Roy Cooper, Super Looper, you know. And we were at the match open, and to mind you, I wouldn't act like this these days, but we were at the match open at San Angelo, Texas, and I've known Roy my whole entire life and, you know, grew up wanting to be him. And anyway, I was there at the match open, and every time, you know, during the, you know, the break, all the little kids would go over there and want to, you know, talk to them and be around them and all that. And this one day that we were there, he was match open. I think he was matching Joe that year, and I went over there and I was talking to him, helping him get his ropes and strings, and there were some other little girls and boys that walked up. And anyway, he was kind of busy, and then he just kind of looked up, and he was looking around, and he's like, hey, little girl, you want my autograph? And I said, no, Super Looper, you want mine?
Yep, and they wonder why the slogan "Rope Like a Girl" was so synonymous. She is the legend. All right, HP, best rodeo story.
Well, I'm gonna leave all mine alone. But when I was a little kid, we'll go there. They're better ones. Gene and Bobby Clark, though, they were my heroes. They were like rodeo clowns, of course. Everybody know them, the Clark brothers. And they had a monkey named Ronnie. And so Ronnie, he would smoke with him. He'd play cards with him, drink beer. And anyway, I was a little kid. We was at Red Bluff, though. Here come Ronnie running back into the trailer. He was just doing this. Like, oh. Anyway, he just bit that Ronnie Rawson, the bull rider's ear off. And he had some of that ear in his lips. Anyway, I never forget it. I was a little kid. I was like, my God.
Good one.
Hey, Dave.
Hey.
I was going to ask HP a question of a story that I heard. Okay, so there's two questions in this. I want to know whose house it was in Modesto during the rodeo at Oakdale that had the horse in the living room, had their roping horse in the living room, and whose headphones were on the horse.
I got no comment.
Pete said that's probably what you'd say.
Oh, as you can tell, there are some deep Sidebar stories. Yes, Joel, it's your turn. Don't look sheepish.
Well, when Capri campers first come on the scene, you know, they had a shower in there, which was good. And I've got a traveling partner, and he's happened to be here, but I bought a new 30-foot hose so we could fill that shower. And I'm going to tell you, I'm the least mechanic in the world, and we had the truck that had the 2 tanks. You'd push a button and switch. Well, it wouldn't work. And I thought, well, I'll get my partner over there, take that 30-foot down on the ground, and when it comes to running out, we'll run it around there and put in that empty tank. And I'm under the truck just tapping a wrench on the, something that makes a noise. And he's down in that ditch, and it's like, this is taking forever. Then pretty soon that gas hit, and he sounded like Donald Duck on crack. But it worked. We got the deal around there, but I had to hang a note around him, do not light a match within 2 foot of Bobby.
Good one. Patrick, I know you said you didn't know much about your granddad, but you've heard stories. You have any good ones for him?
One of my favorites is his beginnings. So this was Great Depression era. He had gotten an albino mare for his birthday. He wanted to be a famous cowboy, so he self-taught trick riding and things, made his own saddle, and then snuck away from the family farm and traveled to Canadian Texas. And he did really well as a trick rider that day. He saw the first pound barrel being used. It was a big day for him, and I think he thought, everything that I've read and heard, he thought he finally made it kind of deal. And so he was going to push it, and he was going to sack out and stay the night with the older cowboys. And his mare slipped away and went all the way home and tapped on the family farm's door to tell on him, I guess. And then so from that point, he continued doing it, but he had to take a pseudonym, the Canadian Kid, to hide it from his family so he could continue on with his rodeo. And so I always thought that was my favorite one. I tried to do I went and I actually tried to drive the distance that he would have gone, and I found the spot for the Anvil Park Rodeo, and it's like after driving, I was like, oh no, I could barely drive this, and he rode it on a horse, snuck out that way, and stayed, and it's just something about his, didn't give up, and it was a unique time period, and it was like the start of everything. It was just, that's my favorite one, I think.
Pretty cool right there. Bobby Goodspeed, there's got to be a good story when your name is Goodspeed. And please don't make this an 8-second run.
I'll pay you bail.
Well, I was a pretty good guy, and my family was. So I really don't have no stories. Now, I know a lot about some others, but I better not tell.
I think he's a firm believer. No evidence, no trial.
Charlie, there's got to be a good story. Tony Gay just got nervous.
1988 Waco Rodeo. I'm scheduled to work the Ben Johnson Celebrity Pro-Am the next day in Houston. And Bobby Brown, Hooter Brown, is going to go with me, but Hooter loads up in an old worn-out Buick. And he said, when you sell the bull riding, we're hauling butt to the west side of Houston because the after party should be winding up and we're going to make it. I said, there is no way in hell that we're going to make Houston from Waco that quick. Hooter Brown said, watch. He drove, and I swear to God, up to 125 miles an hour, and I'm kind of fearful for my life. Hooter, he's not scared of anything. We got to the after party when the last song was playing. Bobby Hooter Brown. Next story, you said Roy Cooper. I picked him up at Meacham Field one time. Hey, CT, you could pick old Super Looper up, man. We got a meeting to go to, okay? So I'm driving too slow for him. Roy Cooper's long legs reach over, put his foot on my accelerator and my foot and press down and would not let up. I'm trying to drive with my left hand, and I am knocking the crap out of him with my right. He won't let up. We're gonna have a wreck. And finally, he lets up. He said, "Super duper, he drives fast." Where do these guys come from? I don't know. Bob Tallman and I getting fined or threatened to be fined at the 91 National Finals. I was the third leg announcer that year, and we were smoking in the Thomas and Mack. And Bob said, "Hold a cigarette under the table, they'll never know." Well, TJ and Sean are looking at us. Sean, I told him last night, and so TJ said, "I'm going to fine you." I said, "TJ, you love to fine people." I said, I won't do it again. I promise I won't smoke again. We should be smoking at the Thomas and Mack. If not, I'll go to grievance. TJ said, "That's fine. I'm chairman of the grievance." So I knew I was screwed right then. So they let us off. They took our name off the dry erase board in the committee room. You've been there. And so the 8th round, Tallman said, "Charles, light up one. Hold it on the table. They'll never know." I said, "Tallman, they will fire us. We'll have a fine we'll never pay. I'm not going to do it." And we didn't. But Sean remembers those days, and it was, guys do crazy things at crazy opportunities, silly stuff down through the years. Or Tough Hedeman popping my headset when I was doing live NBC billboards at the PBR finals, and my ears were ringing 10 seconds from airtime. I hate him. But those are all true stories. I could write a book.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes left, so we'll make it quick. Thank you very much. Donnie, back to your dad. I mean, you talked about what he did. I mean, I didn't know about the hold up the train story, but I mean, people just don't know what he did to put Mesquite Rodeo on the map. And talk about, I mean, he never told the story about all the people he helped, including myself. Talk about what your dad did. If he believed in you, he stepped up and helped you.
Well, he was just all rodeo, and anybody that would put out what he thought was the right kind of effort, then he was going to have their back. He's going to be in your corner. He might not ever say it to your face, but he would be there. And I think over the years, you know, there's just hundreds and hundreds of people that my dad had an influence on, and you know, that's bigger than any world title that you could strap on your buckle. You know, for him to have the beginnings that he had with no money and starting from scratch, to having guys say, "Man, your dad helped me out so many times," and I mean, I've had just countless numbers of guys just saying, you know, "If it wasn't for your dad, I wouldn't be here, or wouldn't have done this, or wouldn't have done that." And it just makes me proud that that I had the opportunity that I had and took advantage of it and worked hard. But I also know that had I worked a little harder, I'd have done a little better. You know, that's just the way he raised us. And the worst part about him being already gone over the slope is when I have a moment where I'm going to say, I actually don't know, I don't have him to call.
I do have to ask one more question in there because at your dad's service, which was in the Will Rogers Coliseum, Joe Beaver told a funny story about some of the events that took place. And there's a Tom Petty song called "I Won't Back Down." Your dad never backed down, did he?
No, he made the tack room at the Mesquite Rodeo, you know, as talked about and as storied as Madison Square Garden Arena. If you had a beef with my dad, you didn't have to talk about it. You just had to ride over to the side gate, get off your horse, go in the tack room, and whoever came out was the winner. My dad always came out. I never saw him be second out the door. I wasn't that tough.
Chad, back to you real quick. You're bucking bulls. The eye for a bucking bull is one thing. I mean, how hard is it to have a champion? You had a back-to-back champion. I believe he was the oldest bull ever to do it and smooth operator. What was so special about that bull?
Well, there's very few like him. I like to compare him to Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, them kind of guys that just have that drive and that heart to be better and to win. And that old bull went, and we had to just baby him and take. He was actually been injured several times, and we had to heal him up. And but just taking care of them animals like they're your kids will get you a long way. And I just babied that bull along, and I always said he weighed about 1650, and just about, I guess his heart probably weighed 16 and a quarter. And that's what, when you know, that very few of them ever come along in your lifetime. You know, you only get one or two of them good saddle horses in your life, and you only get a few of them bulls. And I was fortunate to have several of them, but when you get one like that, I like to think we take care of all of them, but when you get one like that, you spend a little more time with him, taking care of him, and making sure he's able to perform. And that old bull won it when he was 9 and 10 years old, and he should have never been able to buck at 9 and 10, but we took good care of him, and with that big heart of his, he won the world, and he's just, like I said, he's like the Michael Jordans.
Chad, your family has produced some of the best bucking bulls over the years of anybody. But the best story is my dad and Jim Shoulders. You know, y'all were breeding bulls before it was a thing. You know, the bucking horses being bred in Canada, you had to have a northern horse to get big enough to handle the rodeo trail. Jim Shoulders and my dad bought 24 head of green bulls. Green bulls, for those of you might not know, those are ones that these particular bulls coming off out of Eagle Pass in South Texas, off of the river in the swamps down there. They'd never seen a human being before. There were 24 of them, and they were in the pen. They looked like a covey of quail exploding, running into the fence. I mean, these were wild, crazy son of a guns, and these were the bulls who were going to be the first season bulls for the Mesquite Rodeo. They'd never been bucked, never been touched. Tornado was standing in the middle of them. Little Hereford, little white face. I mean, you know, he was probably 3 years old at the time. And they loaded him on the truck. And of all the bulls that came off of the truck, I mean, they were running into the fences and hooking everything. Tornado, he just was kind of not getting run over and wound up being the greatest bucking bull in rodeo history, in my opinion. I mean, this bull bucked for 8 years before anybody ever rode him. And I said, well, why don't you breed him, Jim? And he said, as long as he bucks, I don't give a damn who his grandpa was. So that was the extent of, there wasn't much breeding going on at the Mesquite Rodeo. We bought them wild out of the pasture.
There you go.
Hey, on to the bucking bulls, though. I was just privileged to be at the national finals in 1967 when Freckles rode him there. Was it 69? 67, when Freckles rode Tornado.
The year was 67.
67, he rode Tornado, and it was the most darndest thing I've ever seen at a rodeo. The crowd couldn't keep clapping. They couldn't keep clapping. Freckles, you knew Freckles, how humble he was. And he's standing out in the middle of the arena trying to tip his hat, and they kept Tornado in the arena, the spotlight on him and Freckles, and that was a great moment for me in rodeo when Freckles rode him. Of course, he was getting old then. Yeah. And, but boy, what a great bull he was.
John Taylor, real quick, your mentor. Who did you look up to hone your craft as a funny man? And
Chuck
don't
Hanson.
say the chipmunk.
Yeah. Chuck Hanson was, Chuck Hanson was the funniest man I ever seen in my life. He's funny and courageous, and I looked up to him. I really did. And then Quail Dobbs, I have to respect Quail. He was a great guy. He was funny, and there's so many great people out there, you know, in the rodeo, in the clown business, are doing good. But I respect Quail and Chuck Henson.
Okay. Some legends right there. Mike Hudson, speaking of legends, I believe one of your classmates was none other than the great Phil Line. When you were in college, you were big buddies. Talk about Phil Line when he was a college cowboy, because we all know he was one of the greatest ever, or is one of the greatest ever.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to school with Phil. He had come out of George West, Texas, and it was the fall of 1965. We started Sam Houston. And I had met Phil 2 or 3 times, but I didn't really know Phil. And he and Bud Walker come up there driving like a 64 or 65 El Camino, if anybody remembers what an El Camino was. Well, Bud had that thing, the motor that come in it, I think that day he got it, he took it out, put something in there a little faster, you know, so they could pull that horse trailer about 80. Anyway, they show up at Sam Houston, and we all live. And when you're a freshman, you had to live in a dorm, and we all lived in the same dorm. It's called departmental. When you registered for school, you paid your dorm fee, your room and board went with it, and the whole deal, and registered for like 12 hours of school, and I think it was $650 for everything. Okay, look at it what it is today. It's crazy. Anyway, we hang out, we go to the rodeo club, deal started, and everybody met everybody. And Phil and I don't know, we just fell in and did a lot of stuff together, went to a bunch of those college rodeos together. And we went through some stuff that people wouldn't believe today, and I'm not going to get into it because it was ignorant. But we had a great time, traveled together, and when you rodeoed back then, nowadays, all these young people get rodeo scholarships, full rides through school and stuff. Sonny Sykes was our college rodeo coach, and when you left Huntsville, they'd give you a tank of gas, and that was it. No money, no return gas, just one tank of gas. So, if you wasn't winning something, you know, it made it a little tough to get home. But I usually travel with Phil, and I didn't win nothing, but we always had plenty of money to go wherever we wanted to. So it was. One day he was going to teach me. He said, "You need to learn to rope." And I said, "Have you lost your mind?" He said, "No, I'm going to teach you to rope." So, and it was a set-up deal between him and Bud Walker. We stayed out. They had a place. This was after we were back in rent houses and stuff. And Bud had him and Phil rented this old house out in the country. He said, "We're going to go out there today and start roping hay bales." He said, "I'm going to teach you how to rope." Okay, so we go along here about 2 or 3 weeks. Well, him and Bud said, "You know what, we decided it's about time for you to get on a horse." I said, "Okay, this ought to be good." So back in there, and Phil said, "When you get ready to rope," he said, "be sure and set back, because when that horse sets up," he said, "as soon as you turn loose of that rope, that horse is going to set up. I'm just telling you." Okay. Of course, I take out after that calf took out, and I mean this horse, here we go, lickety-split, and I took that rope, and about the time I threw it, when my hand got right there, that horse nearly flipped over on top of him. I go over the horse's head like a 3.5 and land on my back. I can't breathe. I look around, Phil and Bud are on the ground just whipping themselves. It was a set-up deal the whole time. They knew I couldn't rope a calf. But they thought it was pretty funny. Didn't think it was that funny, but.
There's a prankster everywhere. All right, Charlie. The Neal Gay, take us out. Sum this up. How important is it when you look at this class, when you got the call, to say, congratulations, you're being inducted into this Hall of Fame? Sum it up.
Rob Smets, my old partner, called me, and I kind of teared up, and he got emotional too, because we've been down the pike together for 40 years, have we not? We got emotional, and I thought about all the people. And I came up here in the late 60s as a kid. My sisters would turn me loose in this place. I'd spend all day in here, and I'd stare at the statue of the legendary Bill Linderman. I never got to meet him. But I wanted to be a part of it, Dave. I wanted to be a part of it somehow, somewhere. And I listened to the voice of Tom Hadley. I'm Tom Hadley. This is the national finals of the fastest timed event of them all, the steer wrestling. Now we go to the saddle bronc riding and Cy Talon. Ladies and gentlemen, we go down to the saddle bronc riding event. And a man from Montana. Those sounds are still instilled to me to this day, and when I walk in the doors of that hall, it never gets old. How do you sell it? You sell it. Leon Coffey called me. He was tearful, and he was cheering for me, and he said, congratulations, welcome to the club. He said, Charlie, I'm in every hall there is. But when you get in Oklahoma City in the National Rodeo Hall of Fame, that is the Mount Everest, the Super Bowl of all of them. They started it here 70 years ago. It's still the Hall of Fame. And that's my take on it right there.
Let's have another great round of applause for this great class. Everybody, please stay seated. We'll get a photo. Also, if you are not a member of the Rodeo Historical Society, there will be a general meeting in the classrooms just next door. Please stick around. You can sign up. You can become a member. I think Charlie touched on it so eloquently. And we also have some great swag for all of our inductees. Thank you to Lucchese as well as everybody else. Thanks to the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. That's it for the panel. The induction ceremony starts at 5 o'clock this evening. The doors open. We'll get underway at 5:30. One more time, your 2025 class.